Imagine a world you would not recognize. No grass, no flowers, no birds singing in trees, no trees as you know them. The year is 260 million before our time, the Permian period, and Earth is a planet of giants and monsters. The continents are fused together into one massive landmass called Pangaea, a supercontinent so vast that its interior is a desert wasteland where nothing can survive. The rain cannot reach the center, the heat is unbearable, but along the coasts, life thrives. In shallow tropical seas, reefs explode with color. Crinoids, flower-like animals on stalks, sway in the current. Trilobites, armored creatures that have survived for 300 million years, scuttle across the seafloor. Ammonites, spiral-shelled hunters, patrol the depths. On land, forests of strange conifers and seed ferns stretch toward the sky. Insects the size of ravens buzz through humid air. And walking among the trees, creatures that look like nothing alive today. Gorgonopsids, saber-toothed predators with massive skulls and jaws, powerful enough to crush bone. Not dinosaurs, not quite mammals, something in between, proto-mammals. The ancestors of everything warm-blooded that would come after. Dimetrodon, with its massive sail of skin stretched across its back, basks in the sun near rivers. Dicynodon, a pig-sized herbivore with a turtle-like beak, roots through the undergrowth. This is not the age of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs have not yet been imagined. This is older, stranger, more alien, and it is about to end, not gradually, not peacefully, in fire, in poison, in suffocation, because beneath the ground in what will one day be called Siberia, something is stirring. Magma from deep within the Earth's mantle is rising, pushing, cracking the crust, and when it breaks through, when the pressure becomes too great, the world will burn. But for now, on this ordinary day in the late Permian, a gorgonopsid prowls the banks of a river. Its breath mists in the cool morning air. It does not know that its species has only a few million years left, that in the blink of geologic time, almost everything alive will be gone, that this thriving, bizarre, beautiful world is living on borrowed moments. The countdown has already begun. 252 million years ago, in the region we now call Siberia, the Earth splits open. Not in one place, not in a single volcanic mountain. Across an area 3 times the size of Texas, 6 million square kilometers, fissures crack the ground, and from those cracks, lava begins to pour. Flood basalt eruptions, the largest volcanic event in Earth's recorded history. This is not Mount Vesuvius. This is not even close. Imagine a volcanic eruption that lasts not for days or weeks, but for 2 million years. Wave after wave of magma rising from the mantle, flooding the landscape, burying entire ecosystems under molten rock hundreds of meters thick. The lava flows are so massive that they create plateaus of basalt stone that still exist today. Step-like formations carved by erosion, towering like giant staircases to nowhere. But the lava itself is not what kills the world. It's what comes with it. As the magma rises through the Earth's crust, it encounters something deadly. Coal deposits. Thick layers of ancient compressed plant matter, rich in carbon. The magma cooks the coal, burning it, vaporizing it, releasing unimaginable quantities of carbon dioxide and methane into the atmosphere. 100,000 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide. Let that number sink in. 100,000 billion tons. The atmosphere begins to change. Carbon dioxide levels skyrocket. The greenhouse effect intensifies. Global temperatures start to climb, and the volcanoes keep erupting. For thousands of years, for hundreds of thousands of years. Unstoppable, relentless. Ash clouds blot out the sun, plunging regions into darkness. Sulfur dioxide mixes with water vapor, forming sulfuric acid. Acid rain begins to fall, not occasionally, constantly. The rain burns the leaves off trees. It acidifies rivers and lakes. It etches the shells of marine creatures, weakening them, dissolving them. But worse is happening in the oceans. The carbon dioxide doesn't just warm the air, It dissolves into seawater, turning the oceans acidic. The pH drops. Coral reefs begin to die. Shellfish cannot form their protective shells. Calcium carbonate, the building block of so much marine life, becomes unstable. And then the oxygen begins to disappear. Warmer water holds less oxygen. As temperatures rise, the oceans lose their ability to sustain life. 80% of the ocean's oxygen vanishes. The deep sea becomes a dead zone, anoxic, suffocating. Marine animals that need oxygen to survive begin to die, by the millions, by the billions. On land, the air becomes toxic. Sulfur compounds mix with oxygen, creating compounds that damage lungs. UV radiation increases as the ozone layer weakens. Forests begin to collapse. The conifers that once dominated the landscape wither and die. Their trunks lie scattered like broken bones across the scorched earth. And the fungi appear. Vast blooms of fungi feasting on the dead, on dead trees, dead animals, dead everything, in rock layers. From this time, scientists find fossilized fungal strands by the millions, golf ball-sized rocks packed with 1 million segments of fungi, a planet of corpses, and the scavengers that fed on them. The Siberian Traps are not just erupting, they are rewriting the rules of the planet. And life, complex, diverse, evolved over hundreds of millions of years, does not have time to adapt. It simply dies. The oceans are dying, not slowly, not over millennia. In less than 20,000 years, a geological eye blink, the seas transform from thriving ecosystems into graveyards. Imagine floating in a Permian ocean before the collapse. The water is warm, clear, alive. Below you, coral reefs stretch for kilometers. Brachiopods, shelled creatures that look like clams but aren't, cover the seafloor in dense colonies. Sea urchins, starfish, crinoids waving their feathery arms. Ammonites glide through the water, hunting. Sharks patrol the depths. Early bony fish dart between rocks. Life everywhere, thriving. And then it begins. The water grows warmer and warmer, 10 degrees Celsius hotter than before. Marine creatures are adapted to specific temperature ranges. Their metabolisms are calibrated to the cold, to the oxygen-rich water. But as the water heats, their bodies demand more oxygen. Their hearts beat faster. Their cells burn energy faster. And there is less oxygen to breathe. The water becomes soupy, stagnant. The currents that once circulated oxygen slow to a crawl. Entire layers of the ocean become anoxic, dead zones where nothing that breathes can survive. The creatures try to escape. They migrate toward the poles where the water is cooler, where there might still be oxygen. But even the poles are warming. 96% of marine species die. Trilobites, survivors of 4 previous mass extinctions, creatures that had endured for 300 million years, go extinct. Every single species, gone. The reefs collapse. The brachiopods vanish. The ammonites die by the billions, their spiral shells sinking to the ocean floor in drifts like snow. In some places, the seafloor becomes covered in a layer of dead shells meters thick. The silence is absolute. Where once there was the hum of life, the clicking of claws, the movement of fins, the scrape of shells against rock, there is nothing. Only the slow descent of corpses through acidic, oxygen-starved water. And on the surface, the few survivors, tiny, simple organisms that can tolerate heat and low oxygen, begin to dominate. The oceans do not recover for 5 million years. 5 million years of near emptiness, of microbial mats covering the seafloor, where once there were forests of crinoids, of toxic blooms of algae, of stagnant, lifeless basins. The Permian Ocean is dead. And on land, the dying has only begun. On land, 70% of all vertebrate species die. The great gorgonopsids, apex predators that ruled the Permian forests, vanish. The dicynodonts, the moschops, the bizarre tusked herbivores that looked like nothing else in history, gone. The insects, which had thrived for hundreds of millions of years, suffer their only known mass extinction. Entire orders disappear. The forests collapse, the seed ferns die, the conifers wither. Without plants to stabilize the soil, erosion accelerates. Rivers choke with sediment, mudslides bury valleys, and the air itself becomes hostile. Carbon dioxide levels are so high that breathing is difficult. The heat is unbearable. Temperatures at the equator reach levels incompatible with complex life. Animals that cannot migrate die where they stand. Their bones are buried in ash, fossilized in layers of volcanic sediment. Paleontologists digging in South Africa find a boundary layer in the rock, a thin line separating two worlds. Below the line, fossils of Permian creatures, diverse, abundant, thriving. Above the line, almost nothing, a few hardy survivors, mostly small, mostly insignificant. The world has been simplified. Only the most adaptable, the most resilient, the smallest and simplest organisms survive. Lystrosaurus, a pig-sized dicynodont, becomes one of the few large survivors. For a time, it is the most common land animal on the planet. Entire ecosystems reduced to a single species. And then there are the fungi. Vast carpets of fungi spread across the continents, feeding on the dead, on forests that have collapsed, on animals that lie rotting in the sun. The earth smells of decay, of sulfur, of burning coal. If you could stand on the surface of the late Permian Earth, you would see a landscape out of nightmares. Blackened tree trunks, rivers running with mud, the sky choked with ash. No birdsong, no insects buzzing, no rustling of leaves, just wind and silence, and the slow, patient work of fungi breaking down a world that used to be. This is the great dying, not a quick death, a slow suffocation, a planetary system pushed beyond its breaking point. Scientists studying the Permian extinction discovered something terrifying. The carbon emissions happened fast, catastrophically fast. In less than 15,000 years, the Siberian Traps released 36,000 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere. For comparison, the Paleocene-Eocene thermal maximum, another major climate event, released about 12,000 gigatons over a much longer period. The Permian event was 3 times worse, and 3 times faster. This matters because climate systems have thresholds, tipping points beyond which feedback loops take over and changes become irreversible. The Permian extinction crossed that threshold. The warming triggered methane release from ocean floor deposits. Methane, a greenhouse gas 25 times more potent than carbon dioxide, entered the atmosphere in massive bursts. This caused more warming, which released more methane, which caused more warming, a runaway effect. The forests died, removing the planet's ability to absorb carbon dioxide. Without trees, carbon levels climbed even higher. The oceans became so warm and acidic that plankton, the tiny photosynthetic organisms that produce most of Earth's oxygen, died off. Less oxygen production, more carbon accumulation. The system was collapsing on itself, and once it started, it could not be stopped. Even after the Siberian Traps stopped erupting, the planet remained in a super greenhouse state for 5 million years. 5 million years of lethally hot temperatures, of low oxygen, of ecological collapse. Why so long? Because the forest didn't come back, not for millions of years. Without forests, the planet couldn't regulate its carbon cycle, couldn't cool itself, couldn't recover. The Great Dying was not just an extinction, it was a planetary system failure. And it holds a lesson. Because today, right now, humanity is releasing carbon dioxide at a rate approaching Permian levels. If we continue at the current pace, we will reach the total carbon emissions of the Permian-Triassic event in about 2,700 years. But the rate matters more than the total. The faster the injection, the less time the planet has to adjust, to buffer, to absorb. Cross the threshold, and the feedback loops begin. Permafrost melts, releasing methane. Rainforests die, releasing carbon. Oceans warm, releasing stored CO2. And once it starts, it becomes very, very difficult to stop. The Permian extinction is not ancient history. It is a warning written in stone. 5% of species survived. 5%. The Earth is nearly empty. Ecosystems are simplified to the extreme. Entire continents are dominated by a handful of species. But life, stubborn, resilient, relentless life, does not give up. In the oceans, a few species of shellfish survive in the cooler polar regions. They begin to spread, slowly, tentatively. On land, Lystrosaurus, one of the few large survivors, thrives in the absence of competition. For a time, it is everywhere. The most common animal on the planet. Small reptiles survive, proto-crocodiles, early archosaurs, the lineage that will one day give rise to dinosaurs. And in the ruins of the forests, new plants begin to grow. Not the seed ferns and conifers of the Permian, something different, smaller, hardier, lycopods, small, club-mossy plants spread across barren landscapes. They are survivors, opportunists. The recovery is slow, painfully slow. For 5 million years, Earth remains in a state of ecological shock. Biodiversity does not return. The planet is hot. Oxygen levels are low. Life struggles. But gradually, over millions of years, the climate begins to stabilize. The carbon cycle finds a new equilibrium. Temperatures drop, oxygen levels rise, and evolution begins again. In the oceans, new species of fish evolve. Ichthyosaurs, dolphin-like marine reptiles appear. Ammonites return, diversifying into new forms. On land, the archosaurs radiate into new niches. Some become crocodile-like predators. Others become small, bipedal hunters. And one lineage, small, unassuming, insignificant in the shadow of larger creatures, will eventually become the dinosaurs. The Permian extinction cleared the board, removed the dominant players, and gave evolution a blank canvas. Without the Great Dying, there would be no dinosaurs, no Triassic, no Jurassic, no mammals rising to dominance after the dinosaurs fell. The catastrophe reset life. And from that reset, something new emerged. But it took 10 million years. 10 million years for ecosystems to recover their complexity, for forests to return, for the oceans to teem with life again. The survivors did not just endure. They inherited the Earth, and they rebuilt it. How do we know any of this happened? The Permian extinction occurred 252 million years ago. No cameras, no witnesses, just rocks. But rocks remember. In southern China, near a town called Meishan, there is a limestone quarry. It is one of the most important geological sites on Earth. Here, the rock layers tell the story. Below a certain line, the Permian-Triassic boundary, the rocks are filled with fossils, shells, corals, trilobites, evidence of a thriving ocean ecosystem. Above that line, almost nothing, a thin layer of clay, and then rocks nearly devoid of life. That boundary layer contains clues. Geologists have dated it with extreme precision using uranium-lead dating of zircon crystals. The extinction occurred 251.941 million years ago, give or take 37,000 years. That precision is astonishing. And in that boundary layer, scientists find chemical fingerprints, spikes in carbon isotopes, evidence of massive carbon release, nickel anomalies, nickel from the Siberian Traps magmas, spread globally by volcanic aerosols, sulfur isotopes, evidence of acid rain, fossilized fungal spores, millions of them, proof of a world dominated by decay. In Siberia, the basalt plateaus of the Traps still exist, step-like formations stretching for thousands of kilometers, the frozen remains of lava flows that once covered an area the size of the continental United States. Geologists have drilled into these rocks, dated them, confirmed that the eruptions began exactly when the extinction occurred. The evidence is overwhelming. The Siberian Traps killed the world, and the mechanism is understood. volcanic gases, greenhouse warming, ocean acidification, oxygen depletion, feedback loops. But here is what haunts scientists. The rate of carbon emission during the Permian event was slightly below the current rate of human carbon emissions. Slightly below. We are conducting a planetary experiment, releasing carbon at a speed that approaches the Great Dying. And the question scientists are asking is not if we will trigger similar effects. The question is when, and how bad. Because the Permian extinction teaches us that climate systems have breaking points, cross the threshold, and the planet does not gently warm, it collapses. And recovery, if it comes at all, takes millions of years. The rocks do not lie. They are screaming a warning. We should listen. 252 million years separate us from the Great Dying, an unimaginable gulf of time. And yet, the lesson is clear. Life is resilient, but it is not invincible. Push a planetary system too far, too fast, and it breaks. The Permian extinction was triggered by volcanism humanity cannot replicate. We do not have Siberian Traps scale eruptions, but we do have carbon emissions. And the rate at which we are releasing carbon rivals the Permian event. Scientists studying climate models have identified the mechanism that caused the 5 million year super greenhouse that followed the extinction. It was not the volcanoes themselves, it was the loss of forests. When the forest died, the planet lost its ability to regulate carbon. Without trees to absorb CO2, the climate remained locked in a hot, hostile state, even after the volcanoes stopped. Today, we are watching the Amazon rainforest shrink. Boreal forests in Canada and Russia burn. Tropical forests in Southeast Asia cleared for agriculture. Scientists warn of a tipping point, a threshold beyond which rainforest ecosystems collapse entirely. And if that happens, the planet may not cool, even if we stop emitting carbon. The Permian extinction shows us what lies on the other side of that threshold, a world where 95% of species die, where the oceans become graveyards, where the air is toxic and the heat unbearable. A world that takes 10 million years to recover. We are not there yet. We are not facing a Permian-level catastrophe. But the trajectory is clear, and the warning is written in stone. The Great Dying is not just the story of Earth's worst extinction. It is a mirror held up to our own time. A reminder that planets have limits, that climate systems can collapse, that life, despite its resilience, can be pushed to the edge of annihilation. The survivors of the Permian did not choose their fate. They endured because they were lucky, small, adaptable. We have a choice. We can heed the warning, change course, protect the forests, reduce emissions, avoid the threshold, or we can ignore it and hope that we too are among the 5% that survive. The rocks remember the Great Dying, and they are watching to see what we do next. 252 million years ago, the Earth nearly died. Life survived. Barely. But it took 10 million years to rebuild what was lost in 20,000. 10 million years. Let that sink in. The Great Dying is not ancient history. It is a blueprint for catastrophe. And the question is not whether it can happen again. The question is whether we are wise enough to prevent it. Hey, thanks for sticking with me through that journey. I know the Permian extinction is heavy. It's not a fun topic, but it's one of the most important stories Earth has to tell us. Because it's not just about the past, it's about right now. If this video made you think, if it gave you chills, or if you just think more people need to understand what happened 252 million years ago and why it matters today, I'd really appreciate it if you'd hit that subscribe button. We're building something here at Historical Ashes, a place where history isn't just dates and facts, but warnings, lessons, and stories that matter. Drop a comment below. Tell me, did you know about the Great Dying before this? Does it change how you think about climate change? What extinction event should we cover next? Maybe the dinosaurs or something even older? I read every comment, and your thoughts genuinely shape what we create. And if you want to see what comes next from this channel, hit that bell icon. We've got more extinctions, more disasters, More moments when history struck and changed everything. To the scientists studying these ancient catastrophes, to the geologists reading the rocks, to everyone working to make sure we don't repeat the mistakes written in stone, thank you. See you in the next one. Stay curious, stay thoughtful, and remember, the past is watching.